Want to know what's normal to expect from your sex life as you get older? Keep watching. So if you haven't watched before, my name is Dr. Nicole Diddick and I'm a geriatrician. I work with older adults, and sometimes the idea of what's normal in the sex department as people get older does come up in the office. I think as a society, we sort of have a stereotype that older adults are either asexual or we fall into some of those stereotypes that, for example, an older woman is a predatory cougar or a man is like a lecherous, dirty old man. But those are stereotypes and they're not really accurate. Some things do change as people get older, but some things stay the same. And the things that stay the same are the person's need for intimacy and affection and closeness with another person. The other things that don't change are the person's sexual identity that they had before they got older and their persona. So if somebody was always sort of flirtatious and provocative, that will continue most likely even after the person gets older. But what are the normal changes? So let's talk about the ladies first. In women, it's normal to have some changes in the vagina and the tissues around the vagina, like the vulva, which is the outer part. The tissues there become thinner and there's less lubrication. So the result of that might be that it might actually be painful to have sexual intercourse, and some of the touch that used to be enjoyable might now be irritating. It also takes longer sometimes with aging for a woman to become aroused. There's a sexual response cycle which starts with interest or arousal, goes into sort of a plateau phase, and then orgasm, and then a resolution phase where there's what we would call a refractory period before a person could have another orgasm. When people get older, especially women, that arousal phase can last up to 24 hours. So that doesn't mean that a woman needs physical stimulation for 24 hours beforehand. That would be pretty exhausting. But what it means is it might take longer to get in the mood. A lot of older women will say that their mind is in the mood, but it takes longer for their body to catch up. So in the 24 hours before sex, it might be important to have a lot of foreplay and other romantic activities. That doesn't make it wrong or bad. It just means that you might need to plan things differently around when you're going to have sex. There are things you can do about those normal changes. An example would be using a lubricant. And depending on whether or not you're using condoms or toys when you're having sex, you might want to choose a water-based or a silicone-based lubricant, or even something simpler like massage oil or other kinds of oils that you might even have around the house. For some women, it's important to use medication. So some women will use suppositories with female hormones in them and insert those into the vagina. Sometimes women will get hormone therapy through a patch that's applied to the skin. And sometimes women do take oral hormone replacement. So that would be a pill which contains estrogen and maybe progesterone. Usually the oral hormone replacement is something that we only use if the person is having significant side effects after their menopause. So we would call those side effects vasomotor side effects, things like hot flashes. So there are things to do about those normal changes, and they don't have to mean that your sex life is over. Let's talk about men. And most of the time what comes up is erectile dysfunction, which is kind of a broad term. And it's not just caused by one or two things. It's often multifactorial, and it involves psychological factors, but also physical, medical factors, and sometimes medications also. Erectile dysfunction could be difficulty getting or maintaining an erection, but also difficulty with orgasm. You've probably heard about the medications that can be used to treat erectile dysfunction, and sometimes those are appropriate. But the other thing we would probably do is look at a person's medication list. So what medications are they already taking? There are some medications that can affect erections and orgasm. So, for example, some antidepressants like SSRIs, they can affect orgasm in men and women. Some blood pressure pills can also affect erectile function. And there can be other things too. Medical conditions like prostate conditions quite commonly can affect erectile function. And if that's the case for you, it's probably a good idea to talk to your doctor or your urologist about what your options are. For some people, medication or mechanical devices like pumps or other things can be very helpful. Remember that sex isn't just penis and vagina intercourse. It can be a lot of other pleasurable activities as well. So when there are changes, whether they're normal or part of an illness or disability, or the treatments for those, it doesn't have to mean that a person's sex life is over. So I hope this has been a good review of what's normal in the sex life as a person gets older. If you want to know more about it, go to www.thewrinkle.ca. And please leave a comment. I'd love to know what you're thinking, and I do answer questions. See you next time.